You're interrupting our visit.
I'm sorry. And we're live.
And lunch.
We good, Vanessa? Yeah. The Senate will please come to order. Please join me in a moment of silence in lieu of a devotional today. Thank you. Are there any announcements? Seeing no hands, we have 3 Senate bills for introduction. First, S40, an act relating to the use of colored signal lamps on fire department and emergency vehicle service and emergency medical service vehicles, introduced by Senator Perchlik. Please listen to the first reading.
S40, an act relating to the use of colored signal lamps on fire department and emergency service vehicles.
You've heard the first reading. The bill is referred to the Committee on Transportation. S41, an act relating to eliminating prohibitions and penalties on the purchase, use, and possession of tobacco products, introduced by Senators Lyons and Cummings. Please listen to the first reading.
S41, an act relating to eliminating prohibitions and penalties on the purchase, use, and possession of tobacco products.
You've heard the first reading. The bill is referred to the Committee on Economic Development, Housing, and General Affairs. Finally, S42, an act relating to establishing the Emergency Service Provider Wellness Commission, introduced by Senators Campion and Sears. Please listen to the first reading.
S42, an act relating to establishing the Emergency Service Provider Wellness Commission.
You've heard the first reading, and the bill is referred to the Committee on Health and Welfare. This brings us to the orders of the day. We have on the calendar for action S36, introduced by the Committee on Appropriations. Please listen to the second reading of the bill.
S36, an act relating to modifications to the use of certain coronavirus relief fund appropriations.
The chair is pleased to recognize the senator from Caledonia, the chair of the Committee on Appropriations, for an explanation of the bill.
Thank you, Madam President. May I speak to the bill and the amendment, please?
You most certainly may.
Okay. S36 is a bill that is intended to address time-sensitive corona relief funding programs and needs. The first section of the bill provides authority for the Agency of Human Services to continue to provide extraordinary relief to our long-term care facilities and our adult day programs. We know that those providers have been very hard hit by the pandemic, and this allows the continuation of CRF money that has already been allocated to the agency to be dispersed in this manner. One of the things that has happened since we passed the appropriations bills that appropriated much of the CRF money, there has been an extension. We were operating against a December 30th deadline, but subsequent federal legislation extended that deadline for a year. And we know that the pandemic still rages, and there has been a very significant impact on our long-term care facilities, and this allows them to provide extraordinary financial relief if there's an outbreak in the facility. The other section 2, allows or appropriates additional money, and it's a little bit confusing because of the way that we had to write The second one is for DCF, and it allows continuation of the money appropriated there for the services and the interventions to address our homeless population. Vermont has been held forth as a model in terms of how we've been able to minimize the impact of COVID on our homeless population. And this allows the money to continue to flow so that those services and the stable housing can continue to be supported from this federal funding stream. Section 3 is the one I was getting to, which is a bit confusing. And that is in our prior appropriations, we had a rental assistance program, and we had appropriated $25 million of corona relief funds for that purpose. In the process of looking at expenditure rates, the agency, the Vermont State Housing Board, Vermont State Housing Authority had estimated that there would be $3 million that would not be needed. After that reallocation of $3 million was done, the application rate increased, and in fact, the original allocation was needed. So what you see here is $25 million, which was the original appropriation. It was reduced by $3 million as a result of reallocation. And so what we're doing here is really getting us back to almost the amount that we originally had appropriated. We're adding $2.8 million. And the purpose of this funding is so that we can provide the benefits to the approximate 1,500 Vermont households who are eligible, whose applications were processed in December but were held because the funding was not available, it had all been exhausted. So what this does is increase by $2.8 million the rental relief money so that we can pay the benefits for those December families. Now, I would point out rental assistance really has two benefits. We had data that indicates that many of the rentals, and more than the majority, in fact, are for landlords with 4 or less apartments. So you can see if a tenant where you can't evict and you're having to extend credit for many landlords, rental assistance is really important to receive because they're still incurring their expenses as well. So it really helps needy households not to add to arrearages, but it also helps the landlord keep money flowing because their expenses are certainly not ending. Section 4 has been a topic of a lot of discussion in a flurry of emails. It's the Accelerated Broadband Connectivity Program extension. And what is here, but it's going to be subject to a provision in the amendment, which I will speak to afterwards, is to authorize the dispersing of funds under this program for projects that were contracted for prior to December 20th, 2020, but not completed. So this allows the continuation of payments to these projects. Some were extended for to provide testing, or there were supply chain problems. And so this simply allows the bills to be paid for those projects that are in progress. The legislation that we passed earlier, that the bill that included this appropriation, actually had two provisions that are turning out to be unique to broadband appropriations. And there were two, one of which is the sunset, which is creating the problem here to pay our bills because the bills are coming in after the program has been sunsetted. And the second, which we are dealing with in the amendment, is there was a provision that any unexpended funds would revert immediately back to a Corona Relief Fund for redistribution. So we're, in essence, dealing with the two problems that language created, one of which is the sunset, which was a problem to pay our bills, and the second is that reversion of broadband funds that were to go back to the CRF fund itself. So I'll speak to the second part about the reversion in the amendment. Section 5 is a continuation of the Everyone Eats program. This has proven to be a very popular program, benefiting both Vermonters in need of nutritional assistance, but also to many of our restaurants. Fortunately, this program and this benefit turned out to be eligible for FEMA funding. So instead of having to fund the program all with Corona relief funds, the FEMA dollars will pay for 75% of the cost, and we only have to use CRF money to pay the 25% match. That meant that the Corona relief funding allocation, as we approved it, will go a lot further because it's only having to underwrite 25% of the cost. So what this does is recognize those additional federal receipts and extend the program until through June, or the end of the fiscal year, so June 30th. The next section, Section 6, is a continuation for an additional quarter to use CRF funding to pay the judicial filing fees. This was a topic of a lot of discussion, particularly in judiciary, but also because it relates to fees, it falls into finance as well. And it has to do with the e-filing fees that were originally going to be charged under the through our Tyler technology with our court system. This additional $75,000 will extend the payment of these e-filing fees through March 31st, which will allow time for our committees of jurisdiction to look at the fee structure, and also for the court administrator's office to continue their negotiations with Tyler Technologies in terms of what they could negotiate for what would be viewed as a better schedule of payments and costs back to our legal community. The seventh section of the bill is allowing a grace period. It's kind of cumbersome language, but really what it does is allow the Agency of Human Services to give a grace period on the reporting of the employers that received a grant. And this is had said no later than December 15th. And this is just giving an extension beyond the 15th as at the discretion of the agency. And the other part, Section 8, is we want to preserve Corona relief funds whenever possible as it relates to the new federal dollars that are coming in. And so we want to just have contingency language saying that if we can use other federal funding sources in lieu of CRF, we want to do that because CRF has more flexibility in many regards. So that's Section 8 is simply expressing our desire to maximize federal receipts that are available other than the CRF. Section 9 is effective dates for the various pieces of the bill, the sections of the bill. Now, the amendment addresses several more areas, and I will go to that once I move my papers here. When we took testimony on the housing assistance from the housing folks, they indicated a desire to have a certain amount of the new funding, federal funding in the latest round to be made available immediately for housing assistance. As I mentioned earlier, the 2.8 million only dealt with the applications that were eligible and received in December. But in the new federal bill, Vermont would receive 200 million available for rental assistance. So what this 10 million does is authorize the expenditure of 10 million out of that total of 200 million to keep housing assistance benefits flowing. We know that the new federal funds come with eligibility requirements, and that's why we have the language that they would have to provide the benefits in consistent with the requirements of the Act. Unlike the CRF money that had no income standards, the new federal money that was just approved by Congress in December comes with requirements that households have to have incomes under 80% or less of the median state income. So the new program will have to be changed a bit from what we have been doing, but this allows money to keep flowing to needy households. In the second instance of amendment, we have dealt with the part of the language relative to the broadband appropriations that created the problem with the sunset, but also created the situation where the unexpended funds had to be returned to the state Corona Relief Fund. So what we're doing is modifying that language. We are striking the language that requires the funds to be returned. And what we're doing is saying that any remaining funds, which we estimate about, I think it's 3.6 or 3.8 million that has not been obligated, shall remain with the department, but they cannot be dispersed. And I want to be very clear, although we're saying the money will not be reverted, we're also saying it cannot be dispersed without specific authorization from the General Assembly. There has been some question about whether what we were doing is opening up all the money. And I want to state very clearly, if you read that language, shall not disperse, the commissioner, meaning the Commissioner of Public Service, shall retain the remaining balance, but shall not disperse for any other purpose without specific authorization from the General Assembly. So that leaves the money that has been unexpended for those programs with the Department of Public Service, but it will be up to the legislature to determine how and the conditions under which those funds will be distributed. And so what the first thing we're doing is in the third instance of amendment is authorizing one of the purposes for the disbursement of those funds, and it is to provide an extension of our broadband subsidy program. About 3,000 Vermont households are receiving this subsidy to assist them with the cost of their internet service. And as we well know, internet has been proven to be really essential, both for remote learning for our students, as well as the telemedicine services, which Vermont, it's been incredible in terms of how we have moved so swiftly to telemedicine. So what we are doing here is appropriating $275,000 of the unobligated balance to support for 2 months the continuation of the broadband subsidy program. This should give us time to really understand what we can do with the new federal dollars, but will allow the benefit to flow without interruption. And the last change is simply we wanted to correct a date for the Agency of Human Services. We had referenced December 1st, and in order to make sure that we're picking up any of eligible expenditures, we're making it November 1st, just to make sure that we have the full time frame covered. So the amendment just adds two benefits, one of which is the $10 million to assist families from the new pot of money for rental assistance, and it continues for 2 months the broadband subsidy program. And it also deals with a problem that was created by having those funds revert back to the Corona Relief Fund, and right now preserves them with the Department of Public Service. That is the summary of the bill and the amendments. The bill itself was passed by the Committee on Appropriations on a 7-0 vote. And the amendment, as you can see, is sponsored by all members of the Appropriations Committee, as well as the Chair of Finance and the Chair of Economic Development. That, Madam President, is a description of what this bill is, and the amendment are designed to do, and I hope the body will concur.
You may be muted, Madam President.
Apologies. Let's try that again. The senator from Chittenden County is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to thank the Chair of the Appropriations Committee and the Appropriations Committee as well on both of the provisions in the amendment. Earlier this week in Finance, we learned more clearly the discontinuation of the broadband subsidy program and the fact that the new federal law has a new broadband subsidy program coming into effect March 1st. In communication with the chair, she was incredibly receptive to making this change and providing the bridge of $275,000 to keep this program going in the interim. And on the housing, and I do want to mention that in finding out all this background information, I want to recognize Senator Pearson as well, who worked with Maria Royal and myself to discover what was going on there. In the housing piece, we in our committee had Richard Williams in this week, and he made a very clear case that he needs to get going sooner rather than later to get money out the door. And it seems very obvious to us with $200 million, with the primary purpose being rental housing, rent subsidies, that that's what that program is going to look like. And they're going to need far more than the $10 million appropriate. But this is a down payment to allow administratively for that program to get started. So I thank the committee again and support this amendment.
Thank you. The question is, shall the Senate amend the bill as recommended by the senator from Caledonia and others? If you're ready for the question, please unmute. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying nay. The ayes have it, and you have amended the bill as recommended. The chair knows of no other amendments. The question now is, shall the bill be read the third time? Are you ready for the question? So please unmute. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying nay. The ayes have it, and you've ordered a third reading of S36. We have on the calendar today JRS 9, a joint resolution to provide for a joint assembly to hear the budget message of the governor. The House has proposed to the Senate to amend the resolution as set forth on page 8 of today's calendar. The chair now recognizes the senator from Windham.
Thank you, Madam President. So this is very simple. We had, in anticipation of the budget address coming from the governor, looked at previous years and what the date was of that joint address. It became clear that it was passed from this chamber earlier than was comfortable for the governor's office. They felt like they needed a little bit more time. The House and the Senate are amenable to that change. So it's just changing the date from January 21st at 2 o'clock to January 26th at 1 o'clock.
The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House proposal of amendment on JRS 9 to amend the date to January 26th? Are you ready for the question? If so, please unmute. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying nay. The ayes have it, and the amendment has been adopted. This completes orders of the day. The chair recognizes the senator from Wyndham.
Thank you, Madam President. Pending announcements, I move that the Senate stand in adjournment until 11:30 on Friday, January 22nd.
Are there any announcements? The senator from Bennington is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. Senate Education will meet at 1:40 this afternoon, when we will be hearing from our very own Senator McCormick on his bill on civic education. Thank you.
Thank you. The senator from Washington is recognized.
Madam President, Senate Finance will meet 10 minutes after adjournment.
The senator from Wyndham is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. Senate Government Operations will meet 15 minutes after, follow the gavel. I believe that's about 1:40.
We hope. Are there any other announcements? The senator from Addison is recognized.
Senate Natural Resources and Energy will meet tomorrow morning, 8:30 a.m.
The senator from Bennington is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. Senate Judiciary will meet tomorrow morning at 8:30. I did a small poll and found that half the bills introduced so far have been for Judiciary, so we got to get to it.
Thank you. The senator from Caledonia is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm assuming you're referring to the junior senator from Caledonia, because I saw the senior senator from Caledonia's hand up as well.
With respect, yes.
Thank you. Senate institutions will meet at 1:45.
And the senior senator from Caledonia is recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. Senate Appropriations will meet 10 minutes after the fall of the gavel.
Thank you. The senator from Essex Orleans is recognized.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I'd just like to announce that the Ag Committee will be meeting tomorrow morning at 9, and our witnesses that we're going to have in is people from the congressional delegation and talking about issues that might be coming out of Washington. And so if anybody wants to listen in, I want people to know, senators to know that. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any additional announcements? Oh, the senator from Grand Isle is recognized.
Madam President, Transportation will meet tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.
Thank you, Senator. The senator from Chittenden is recognized.
Senate Health and Welfare will meet tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.
Thank you. Are there any other announcements? Seeing no further announcements, the senator from Wyndham has moved that subject to any announcements, the Senate do adjourn until Friday, January 21st. Seeing no further announcements, are you ready for the question? So please unmute. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying nay. The Senate stands adjourned until Friday, January 21st